On the night of August 9th, 1969, Los Angeles glowed under its usual canopy of warm city lights. But high in Beverly Hills, inside a quiet home on Cielo Drive, a turning point in Hollywood history was quietly unfolding. It was the residence of actress Sharon Tate, beloved star of the 1960s, who was expecting her first child and surrounded by close friends. No one imagined that within hours, the home would become the center of a story that would alter the industry forever. Sharon Tate was often described by the press as the gentle face of the new Hollywood. Her natural beauty, soft presence, and rising career made her one of the most admired figures of her generation. She had what many dreamed of: a flourishing career, a well-known filmmaker, husband, and the joy of becoming a mother. Yet that same night, while her friends chatted, laughed, and kept her company in the final days of her pregnancy, something unknown was moving toward there. Peaceful evening. Beverly Hills, often seen as one of the safest places in Los Angeles, was about to become the setting of an event that stunned an entire nation. Outside, everything remained silent. Inside, lives were moving toward a moment that no one could have predicted. When dawn arrived, the world would wake up to a headline so unexpected that many thought it had to be a mistake. The tragedy on Cielo Drive did not simply mark the end of several lives. It marked the end of an era, the moment Hollywood realized that safety and glamour could disappear in a single night. Sharon Tate was born in Dallas, Texas, in 1943 into a military family. Because of her father's work, she spent her youth moving from one state to another and later to Europe. Her striking appearance and calm personality made her a standout from an early age, and she won several local beauty titles as a teenager. When her family moved to Italy, Sharon's interest in acting grew. She appeared briefly in European productions and developed the dream of performing in front of the camera. After returning to the United States, she was noticed by 20th Century Fox and signed to a contract that began her path into Hollywood. In her early career, she took small television roles, steadily building her reputation. Her breakthrough came with Valley of the Dolls, which instantly turned her into one of the most talked about actresses. Fans loved her not only for her appearance, but also for her sincerity and dedication. Sharon met director Roman Polanski during the filming of The Fearless Vampire Killers. Their relationship quickly became iconic, often featured in magazines and entertainment columns. They were admired as one of the most modern and artistic couples of their time. By the summer of 1969, Sharon's life was full of hope. She was expecting her first child, a boy. Photographs from those final weeks show her smiling, radiantly, gently holding her baby bump, clearly excited for the future. To her friends and colleagues, it seemed she was living the happiest chapter of her life. Sharon and Polanski had chosen the peaceful house on Cielo Drive as the place to welcome their child. With Polanski away working in Europe, Sharon spent her final weeks preparing for motherhood, often surrounded by friends to keep her company. She chose clothes for the baby, decorated the nursery, and talked frequently about how her life was about to change. Those around her described her as peaceful, optimistic, and glowing with joy. Hollywood in the late 60s reflected this atmosphere, carefree, open, and trusting. It was an era where actors and artists believed their homes were safe havens, far removed from the troubles of the outside world. No one believed danger could ever reach a quiet hilltop home. But on that warm August night, something quietly approached that would end that feeling forever. That evening, Sharon invited a few close friends to spend time with her at the house. They talked, shared stories, and kept her company as she neared her due date. Nothing felt unusual. The night was calm and familiar. Around 12:30 a.m., a neighbor heard a sound that seemed out of place, something sharp, brief, and difficult to identify. When no additional noise followed, the neighbor went back to bed, unaware that something crucial had been missed. Shortly after, a patrol officer driving through the area heard what sounded like a faint cry, but after circling the neighborhood, he found nothing unusual. Around 3 in the morning, a dog from a nearby home began barking intensely and then suddenly went quiet. Individually, these moments seemed insignificant. Together, they would later paint a picture of a tragedy unfolding behind closed doors. Unnoticed, unheard, and unimaginable. Inside the house, events were taking a drastic turn, yet no one outside had any way of seeing what was happening. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the housekeeper arrived for her usual workday. As she approached the entrance, she noticed a white Rambler car parked in the driveway, something she did not recall seeing before. She continued toward the kitchen and immediately sensed something was wrong when she found the phone line disconnected. A few steps further, she encountered a sight that left her in shock. An individual lying motionless on the lawn. Panicked, she ran to seek help. On her way out, she glanced into the parked Rambler and saw another person inside. Authorities were immediately notified. When they entered the home, they found Sharon Tate in the living room, no longer alive, positioned beside another victim. Signs in the room showed attempts to escape and call for help. But the isolated nature of the house made intervention impossible. Windows were damaged, evidence of force was present, and the silence of the night now revealed the magnitude of what had happened. News spread across Los Angeles within hours. What had occurred at Cielo Drive sent shockwaves through the city. For the first time, Hollywood felt vulnerable. Investigators initially questioned Roman Polanski, who was devastated by the news. With his travel records, witness confirmations, and a past truth verification test, he was cleared of suspicion. But once Polanski was ruled out, authorities realized they had no solid leads. There were no clear signs of how the intruders entered. No obvious motive. No message left behind. The case stood still, creating widespread fear and confusion. Weeks turned into months, and the pressure mounted. The community wanted answers. Hollywood wanted reassurance. But the investigation had reached a difficult standstill. Then came an unexpected turn, not from the crime scene, but from a women's correctional facility. A woman named Susan Atkins, detained for an unrelated matter, spoke with another inmate and mentioned being involved in a major incident. She mentioned Sharon Tate's name. She described details that aligned with evidence the public had never heard. The inmate, realizing the significance, informed authorities. During questioning, Susan mentioned a group called the Manson family, led by a man named Charles Manson. What she revealed would change the entire direction of the investigation. Charles Manson's early life was unstable. He spent much of his youth in and out of reform institutions. After his release in 1967, instead of rebuilding his life, he began gathering followers, mostly young individuals searching for purpose and belonging. Manson once pursued a career in music and approached producer Terry Melcher. When Melcher declined to work with him, Manson grew resentful. The house on Cielo Drive had previously been Melcher's residence, and investigators later concluded that the tragic event was connected to this mistaken association. Sharon Tate had no connection to Manson. She was simply living in a house that had once belonged to someone he had tried to approach. According to later testimony and collected evidence, for individuals acting under Manson's direction went to the Cielo Drive home on the night of August 9th. They disabled the phone line and entered the property. The victims inside attempted to escape or call for help, but the isolation of the home and the distance between neighbors made intervention nearly impossible. Each sound heard that night, the brief noise, the faint cry, the sudden silence of the dog, matched the timeline reconstructed by investigators. It was a sequence of moments that only made sense in hindsight. The tragedy left the nation stunned. It was beyond anything people believed could happen in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. The trial that followed lasted more than 9 months, one of the longest in American history. At the time, it cost over $1 million and filled more than 31,000 pages of documentation. The public followed every update, every testimony, every courtroom development. Charles Manson and 2 others were initially sentenced to death, but their sentences were changed to life imprisonment after California altered its capital punishment laws. Susan Atkins and other participants received reduced penalties for cooperating with investigators. Manson remained incarcerated for nearly 5 decades until his passing in 2017 at the age of 83. The case officially closed, but its impact continued to echo. Time has softened many events in Hollywood's history, but Sharon Tate's name has never dimmed, never slipped into the background. Instead, it has grown into something larger than the life she lived. A symbol of innocence, of hope, of the fragile beauty that once defined an entire era. People often speak of Sharon as if she stepped out of a dream, ethereal, gentle, effortlessly radiant. And maybe that is why her story still lingers. She carried a kind of warmth that seemed untouched by fame, untouched by the pressures of the industry around her. What the world remembers is not a headline, but a presence, a kindness that glowed quietly behind every smile. Her colleagues remembered her as someone who moved softly through a room, someone who believed in the power of encouragement rather than competition. She treated everyone, from co-stars to crew members, with a graciousness that made people feel seen. Every recollection paints the same portrait. Sharon Tate was loved because she made others feel valued. As years passed, Hollywood changed. The 70s reshaped the industry, the 80s reinvented it, and by the time the millennium arrived, the town no longer resembled the sunlit dreamscape of Sharon's generation. But even as the city evolved, her memory refused to fade. Critics re-examined her films with new appreciation. Photographers showcased her portraits as timeless works of art. Directors explored the emotional weight of her story. Each tribute, each mention added another layer to the legacy she left behind. And beyond the spotlight, something quieter endured, the impact she had on the people who knew her personally. Friends described how compassionate she was, how she celebrated others' successes, even when she faced her own setbacks. They spoke about her plans for motherhood, her excitement for the future, her belief that life still had so much waiting to be discovered. This is the Sharon Tate the world chooses to remember. Not the circumstances that ended her journey, but the light she carried throughout it. Her story also changed Hollywood in ways few could have predicted. It encouraged conversations about safety, about vulnerability, about how even the most admired figures were human beings first. In a strange way, the tragedy forced an entire industry to confront its own illusions, to acknowledge that fame offered visibility but not protection, admiration but not immunity. Yet despite everything, Sharon's legacy remains rooted in beauty, not sorrow. People still share her photographs because they feel alive. They still watch her films because she feels present. They still speak her name because it represents more than a loss. It represents a life that touched countless others and continues to do so. And perhaps the most powerful part of her legacy is this. Sharon Tate's story inspires empathy. It encourages us to look at celebrities not as distant figures, but as individuals with dreams, joys, and vulnerabilities no different from our own. It reminds us that behind every iconic image is a human life, fragile, meaningful, irreplaceable. Today, new generations discover Sharon for the first time. They don't just see a star from the 1960s. They see someone whose spirit outlived the era that shaped her. Her beauty has become timeless, but more importantly, so has her impact. And that is why remembering her matters. Stories like Sharon's are not about reopening the past. They are about honoring it, protecting it, ensuring that the lives which shaped our culture are never forgotten. If Sharon's story stayed with you, then you already understand why this channel exists. Gone But Iconic is devoted to preserving the final chapters of the lives that changed history, not through sensationalism, but through respect, empathy, and truth. We tell these stories so that their voices continue to echo long after the world has moved on. If you want to continue exploring the untold last moments of the legends who shaped music, cinema, art, and culture, we invite you to follow this channel. Your support allows us to keep documenting these journeys with the care they deserve. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for remembering Sharon Tate, not for how her story ended, but for the radiance she brought into the world. We'll see you in the next chapter. Another soul, another legacy, gone, but forever iconic.